Good evening, everybody. Eric Foster, Board Chairman of Kansas Capital Holdings, as well as Equirate AI and lead strategist and point person on our Equirate AI initiative. I wanted to talk, though, about something that has parallel to what Equirate AI is. And I think it's important because it ties into how opportunities for growing wealth for diverse communities are taking place and what we're facing in terms of forces who are attempting to short circuit that. And what I mean right now is the revenue and income that student athletes are making in college, especially those in the major sports, but it permeates down even to those in the smaller sports where they're able to make money either through revenue sharing from their university or they're able to make money through NIL, name, image, and likeness deals. And what's in particular is a concern that the Trump regime, after having a meeting with a number of, in my own personal opinion, entitled financially bloated individuals who are not interested in sharing the money pie with these athletes, complaining about the impact of the student athlete having the same dynamics that any employee has in terms of negotiating and workers' rights, the ability to pursue better deals, the freedom of movement between jobs while getting an education. So last month, there was an executive order that came out by the Trump regime called Urgent National Action to Save College Sports. So let me take a step back. The premise of today and why I'm doing this video today, and there'll be an accompanying video secondarily after this, is to talk of how when we're trying to build generational wealth and we're trying to create opportunities for people, especially people of color, there's so many ways that certain entrenched groups attempt to stop or short circuit those activities. And it is critical and important that before they can short circuit it, that you get organized, but that you also lean on and connect with groups like us here at Kansas Capital who do risk management products for those who are in the NIL environment so that you can get guidance and information that can help you and your family make good decisions. Because the income that you're able to make is real, but the efforts to take that away from you and turn you back into a student athlete who's just getting scholarship and a small amount of income is real. It's a threat. And so, right now, here's the system that we have. So, they're starting in 2021 as a result of a lawsuit. The NCAA started to open up the ability for students to get name, image, and likeness contracts and revenue to basically cash in on the value that they brought as being a student athlete. And so there were three different types well, two different types originally of those structures. One was commercial, and commercial spending is by brands and fans on NIL products. And you'll see people who they're aggregators or groups or entities that set up sites for people who want to be a sponsor of an athlete or they want to pay for an autograph or they want to sign jersey or something of that ilk. And that's a way for that athlete to generate income. Then there's also the collective model. And the collective model is spending by donors and boosters, which form a legal entity, a collective, and that collective supports either all of the athletic programs at that university or specific programs at that university. And then it provides revenue opportunities for that student. Now, those opportunities, of course, are weighted to the better of your performance. Better performance increases the opportunities for more money. The commercial activities, a lot of that is drawn on how you build your business and sales persona in the marketplace, generating follows through social media, becoming an influencer, those sorts of activities, which can create extra revenue. Now, here's the rub: through the commercial NIL deals, the athlete only gets roughly 29% of those dollars. Now, that can range from 10% for jerseys or video game revenue when their image and likeness is cited, such as the NCAA games that EA Sports does, or 80% for services like social media posts. But in the collectives, you get 90% of those dollars, and the other 10% goes to overhead and commissions to support the operation of the collective. Now, think about that. And I'm going to put some numbers behind it because when this started in 2021, and it started in the summer of 2021, July 2021, that first year, well, first year going into 2022, the NIL collectives generated about $321 million, with 90% of those dollars flowing through to the athletes that the NIL collective supported at the different schools. The commercial NILs generated roughly $596,700. So 596,700,000. Now there was a shift in which the next year the money from the commercial went down to 229 million, but the money from the collectives went up to 910 million. All entailed though, these dollars are creating and have been creating since 2021 significant income for a good number of student athletes, and not just football and basketball, although those are the primary ones. But you've had athletes in gymnastics, hockey, baseball, women's softball, volleyball, wrestling, golf, other swimming, other sports where they've been able to build a brand in addition to their performance, and they've been able to generate hundreds of thousands of dollars in income. Now, not everybody does that, but they've been able to. And we're now in a place where starting in 2025, you have a third caveat that gets added to this opportunity for the athlete to generate income. And that is after a number of decisions that were made in court, especially House v. NCAA, in which now we have collegiate revenue sharing, in which the colleges and universities at the Division I level can opt in to do revenue sharing in which they can spend 22% of their athletic department budget to pay their athletes across all of their different sports. Now, of course, the biggest pots goes to men's basketball and the football, but depending on the school, let's say if you don't have a major football program or you don't have a football program, then those dollars are going a little bit differently. Let's say you're St. John's, as an example. You don't have a Division I football team, so your money's going heavily to your basketball and then spread down to other sports. So there, if you're an athlete going into gymnastics or some of those others, you can make more money. I say all that to say the opportunities are huge. And now with this, to sit in companion with the commercial NIL and the NIL collectives, last year, the total amount of income that was available for student athletes was $2.7 billion. $2.7 billion. Now, with the revenue sharing, 95% of that money goes to the student athlete. So while that's more so based on the team that you're on, that's also got a performance component to it too. Because if you're a quarterback and a starting quarterback, you're going to get a higher revenue sharing paycheck than if you are a third string quarterback or if you are a third string defensive end. So there is a performance dynamic, not as much as what you can get through the commercial NILs and the NIL collective. But in 2025, 1.92 million billion, I'm sorry, 1.29 billion of those dollars flowed into the hands of the student athletes. Now, here's where the amazing part of this comes in, because this is creating generational wealth opportunities for minority student athletes. So right now, there are 7 sports that are the big 7 for men's and women's sports that get the overwhelming majority, over 90 plus percent of the dollars through both funnels. On the men's side, that is baseball, that's basketball, football, baseball, and ice hockey. On the women's side, it's basketball, gymnastics, and volleyball. Softball does good as well, but I just didn't roll them into this particular analysis. So in 2025, there were a total of 202,748 student athletes via the NCAA's demographic data, where they have a dashboard where you can see all of the athletes in Division I, II, and III. And then they also have a additional demographic breakdown where you can go in and see by sport, or you can see by conference, and you can also see by race, ethnicity, and gender. And so, but in those big sports that I just mentioned, on the men's side in 2025, there were 54,485, and on the women's side, 12,873. Now, here's the great thing about that, because in that, only 43% of the male athletes in the big 4 sports are white. 37.3% are Black, 4.5% are Hispanic, 8.8% multiracial. Unfortunately, you only have a small number. You've got 1.2% that are Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander. You've got 0.5% that are Asian American, 1/4% that are Indigenous American, and that's on the men's side. But that's out of that pool of that 54,485 male student athletes. The majority of them are non-white. The opportunities for them to get these dollars and bring these dollars back to communities for investing in businesses, for starting their own businesses, because most of these athletes are not going to become professional athletes. But the opportunity to come out of college a multimillionaire because of your work not only gives you a leg up, but it also gives you an opportunity to invest in your community, to be a part of changing your community's economic output. That is huge. So just think about that. And then, so out of that, going back to that 900, I mean, 1.92 billion in 2025, 2026, with over 90% of that going to athletes in these seven categories. On the male side, 57 point, basically 57% of that is going to non-white athletes on the male side. On the women's side, only 48.3% of the female athletes are white. The rest, 51.7%, are not white, with 24% being African American, 5% being Hispanic. And then there's also a category for international. So you've got 2.15% on the male side. You got basically 7% on the female side. You've got 10% multiracial. You've got 2% Asian. You've got 0.33% Indigenous American. But collectively, so much of those dollars are flowing into these particular athletes in these particular programs. Now, on the revenue sharing side, from data from NIL.NCAA, when they got data from power schools and they were asking them, well, how much are you paying? Now, this is not the NIL portion that you're getting from the collective or from the commercial NILs, but you're getting from the schools on the revenue sharing side. So on the football side, on the basketball side, the average athlete is getting $218,000. The average football player, $146,000. Hockey, 21,000. Women's basketball, 16,000, 16.7 thousand. I mean 16,708. Then baseball, 10,723. Volleyball, 6,000. Gymnastics, 4,800. And then, so you add that, so now that's collectively 424,376. So that's what the average athlete is getting in those top seven sports that I mentioned. Now, with 57 and 51, basically rounding up 57 and 52% of those dollars going to non-white athletes across those different sports before they get their NIL. Like I say, this is a positive foundational activity based on work performance, based on the ability to dual task by also being a student and meeting the academic requirements, but also having the freedom of collective bargaining and negotiation where you can go and get potentially both a better salary with a better NIL package deal from one university to another. The opportunity for young Black and Hispanic and Asian and Indigenous and Arab American and Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander American people to go to college, men and women, and to benefit is huge. And then the ability for them to come back and have those dollars to invest, whether it is, say, in the industry where the Equirate AI is initially built for, the cannabis industry, or if it's for them to invest in other industries, these are generational game changing opportunities that don't require becoming a pro athlete. Now, of course, you want to try that, but most of them are not going to be. There's only a finite number of slots in the pros, male and female pros. But these are transformative opportunities, which gets to the premise of why I'm talking today, why I'm repping my team, Michigan State, as my school. So you have the coaches and others who've been making tens of millions of dollars from everybody from the Nick Sabans, the trader Nick Saban, who left us here at Michigan State to bail on us and go to LSU. I still like Nick, but him and Dabo Sweeney and others, Urban Meyer and others who were whining and complaining, and then the MAGA regime and the MAGA congressional subsidiary members to get together with their guy Trump to say and complain, this isn't right. This freedom of movement that these student athletes have, the amount of money that they're being paid, now the fact that we have to, based on this lawsuit that we settled, House v. NCAA, not only are they getting money from the NILs and from both commercial and collective, but now they're getting money from us in terms of salary, and we still are giving scholarships, and we still have to give a per diem. This is just so much. Oh, woe is us, woe is us. Remember, at the same time, where they're making billion-dollar TV deals with the networks here in America and getting, of course, international rights to broadcast the NCAA March Madness tournament or the college football playoffs or the women's NCAA March Madness or other sports like volleyball, softball, gymnastics, etc. Getting billions for that, plus merchandising dollars and other fees. These colleges and universities are not poor. And let's just be real. But they're sitting here and they're claiming poor and poverty and saying, oh, please, you've got to restrict the ability for these student athletes to make money. And remember, it's not just the minority students that they're taking money out of the pockets of, it's also poor white students who came up from the sticks, if you will, and who, because of their God given athletic talent, have been able to parlay that into a good paying job in college. Come on. So you're making even the white kids poor. You want to make them poor too. And so you had this executive order on April 3rd that came out, actually it was this month. And it basically purports that we have a crisis in terms of the amount of money that's being spent for the student athletes and the deficits within these athletic programs. Mind you, if these athletic departments started running themselves more effectively, they could deal with the deficit. But I digress. They want to fix their deficit and bad management on the backs of the athletes who are playing for them. But this order goes into things that don't have anything to do with sports, talking about that the amount of money that the student athletes are making, which, mind you, is also money that they should have been paid decades ago, is somehow jeopardizing the overall well-being financially of the universities that the federal government has relationships with, including defense contracting with the Department of Defense, with medical research, with HHS, with scientific research, with the National Science Foundation, etc. Mind you, the regime that's in charge right now has been cutting money in all of those different areas, using that money as extortion to try to wring out non-white students, or under the false guise of fighting anti-Semitism, it from an administration that's full of people that are anti-Semitic, the things that they purport as the reasons why they're doing this are all bullshit. But let's get on. And so, what they want to do with this order to take effect in August is they effectively want to shut down the overwhelming majority of the collective and commercial NIL programs. Now, why is that going to negatively hurt the student athlete significantly? Is because even with the money that is being spent in the first year, 1.5 billion of that 2.7 billion that I mentioned, that was spent on the three categories, came from the revenue sharing. 994 million came from the commercial NIL, and 227.3 million came from NIL collectives. So you want to take out 1.2 billion from that pot. Now, mind you, that money is going to stay roughly around 1.2 to 1.3 billion forecast over the next few years per the annual open doors report from 2024-2025 NIL at 4, monetizing the new reality. And so, but what you're also going to be taking out of the hands of the student athlete is you're going to be taking in the first year 493,091 490 no 493,091,000. I apologize for mistaking the numbers because I'm looking here at the spreadsheet. Matter of fact, I'm gonna share my screen because I think y'all need to see what these numbers look like, because this is a lot of money for these student athletes. Let me make this bigger so you can see. So, as I mentioned, you have this, which is this is 2025, 2026, $2.7 billion. This is how much goes to the student athlete. 29% of the commercial dollars on average, 90% of the collective dollars, and 95% of the revenue sharing. So you want to take this $493 million out of the pockets of these young Black, Hispanic, poor white, Asian, Indigenous American, Arab American, Native Hawaiian, and multiracial student athletes who are putting in the work, because this is a job. Those universities and coaches are being paid millions of dollars a year, and they're generating billions of dollars on the backs of these kids or these young adults. And you want to take that away from them, which also is going to take away roughly still another, over the next 3 years, forecast another $1.3 billion out of their pocket. $1.3 billion. I mean, I'm sorry, but that's not cool, considering the fact that, you have this many students, athletes, and then you got this many coaches. Now, the coaches are disproportionately white. Over 76% of the coaches in NCAA Division I are white. but only when you add in all of the athletes, when you look at all of the 202,000 athletes, 48%, well, not 48, I'm sorry, 45.75% are non white. So when you add in all of the sports, including rowing and swimming and fencing and others, you want to take billions of dollars away from all of those student athletes right now and going forward of the income that they can make that can help them live or help them build a financial foothold into the rest of their adulthood to be able to come back home and set themselves and their families up for positive economic returns. Come on now. That's just hot garbage and bullshit. But and like I mentioned here, the number in the big sports categories. But let's go back to the executive order. So let me, all right. So they want to do that. So that's here where they want to address taking away the most of the NILs under this fair market value model, which they want to limit it to a valid business purposes. But basically, from the reading not just of myself but of various law firms that have read this as well, this language seems extremely limiting in terms of the ability for both the commercial and the NIL collectives to be able to continue to function based on this part. But then they want the colleges and universities to immediately implement this by August the 1st. They want to use federal funding as another coercion tool to say if you don't implement our rules, we're going to withhold federal dollars for you. But then here's the other things that they want to do to once again treat the student athlete who really is an employee less than other employees. So they want to restrict the ability for them to transfer and have immediate eligibility, which we've already had litigation and we have judicial precedent, common law that allows for the student athlete to have freedom of movement like any other employee. They're not indentured servants or slaves. They should have freedom of movement, and that's what they do have. You may not like it as a fan, but who cares? Because it's about this young man or woman's opportunity to not only work their profession, get an education, but also make a good living while doing it. And so the freedom of movement they want to restrict to basically one transfer during a 5-year period and possibly an additional transfer with immediate eligibility if you've gotten your 4-year degree. Then this prioritize the academic development, success, graduation, and long-term well-being of the student athlete. So I want to say this, if that was the case and that was the concern, I want to point you all to Lane motherfucking Kiffin. Because if there was really a concern about the well-being, development, and success and graduation of the student athlete, do you know how many kids, how many young men Lane Kiffin is left hanging at different colleges and universities, including Ole Miss? Come on now. Nick Saban did that to us here at Michigan State. Then he did it to LSU to go to Miami to coach in the pros. Come on now. It's never been about this. And then this other dynamic that the transfer window doesn't incentivize interference. You know, you can through collective bargaining, and this is the importance of having collective bargaining rights for the student athlete employee. And I'm going to use that terminology purposely going forward because they really are a student, athlete, and an employee all at the same time. But the ability for them to have the ability to determine when they want to leave, but if you want to bargain times of when they should be able to leave so that they're not per se leaving during the playoffs, if you will, then that's reasonable. But that's the only thing, and that should be able to be done through collective bargaining between the students and the colleges and universities, the NCAA, not through Trump's order. But then they want to, in their, now this is just straight BS. I'm going to highlight this here. Implementation of revenue sharing between the higher education institutions and athletes that preserves and expands scholarships and collegiate opportunities in women's and Olympic sports, including provisions to prevent revenue sharing from being allocated in a manner that results in a reduction of scholarships and opportunities in women's and Olympic sports. Here's the problem with that. So, coming out of the House decision, I'm going to go to another doc because coming out of the House decision and a couple of the other decisions that took place, if I am not mistaken, and that's why I'm going to this graph here. Yep. So, coming out of the House decision, and this is data that I got from NIL-NCAA.com, the number of scholarships per Division One sport are increasing, not decreasing. And this includes Olympic related sports, and this includes women's sports, fencing for women from 5 to 24, field hockey from 12 to 27, golf from 6 to 9, gymnastics from 12 to 20, beach volleyball from 6 to 19. In a nutshell, the executive order is a fucking lie. Excuse a little bit of profanity, but that particular part is a lie because this has already been settled. 22% of your department budget spent, and then with growth tied to it, indexed at 4% each year going forward. So you have to increase your spending 4% each year going forward from that 22%. And scholarships are being increased. So that part of the so-called order is a lie. It just is. That somehow these things are going to, this money that these men and women are going to earn is going to somehow hurt all of them. It's bullshit. And then, like I say, the whole thing that they want to do in terms of they want to step in to interfere with the number of roster spots for the varsity programs, as well as the amount of money that's spent on student aid and other payments that the athletes get, things that were addressed in the House v. NCAA lawsuit. It's like, it's straight garbage. And so ultimately, at the end of the day, and like I said, I want to go back to the spreadsheet because just look at that. So for those young women, even in the smaller colleges, a base salary of 16,000 per year on average, with an ability to negotiate higher, plus an ability to get NIL dollars to double or triple that, depending upon your performance and your capability. And they want to steal that away from the student athlete. It's just straight bullshit. And so going back to this particular data point here, since 2021, 2022, the whole NIL program and now revenue sharing starting in 2024, 2025, by the time we get to 2028, 2029, if nothing is interrupted, the amount of money that goes into the system with the splits that I mentioned is $17.1 billion. The amount of money that goes to the athletes by 2028, 2029 will be $11.8 billion. $11.8 billion. This is why this regime and these people are so adamant. And it's crudgety old men. Let's just call it what it is. It's crudgety old men who want to go back to the 1970s where you as an athlete at the university or college were basically treated like an indentured servant slave instead of you being treated for the talent that you bring to the table, your ability to work within a system. But if you want to leave to find a better fit for you, that is your right of freedom, your right of citizenship, and also your right as an employee in the marketplace to find a better job opportunity. You should have that ability. This is just bullshit. And so ultimately, this is huge, the amount of money, because this would be restricted. So they want to reduce this number, which, like I say, they want to take billions of dollars out of the pocket of the student athlete. Parents, families, athletes, other stakeholders, are you all okay with this? Because you shouldn't be. Just like what we're doing with Equerate and what we've seen with the cannabis industry as it having an opportunity to create a pathway for real business growth and success and real marketplace entry that doesn't cloud out the average person or group or startup business from being able to grow to become the Ford or the Delta Airlines or others within the cannabis industry. The ability for thousands of minority and poor white student athlete employees to make money that they can come back into their communities, invest, spend, start businesses, things that add to the overall positive economics of the community. And these folks want to steal it from them? Come on. I'm sorry, but to me, that's just straight bullshit. And that should not be even something that should be considered. If you want to steal money from somebody, fine. Go find somebody else to steal it from, but don't steal it from people who are earning it, who are putting in the work and getting what they have worked for and should have that ability and that freedom to become positive economic engines for their family and their community. It's another way of stealing wealth from people, and that is bullshit. Equity is about building wealth. These activities since 2021 at the collegiate sports level are about building wealth. Taking that wealth away hurts everybody. And doing it for a few old, bitter men who are mad that they don't get their way to continue to treat these men and women, student athlete employees, like slaves in the mud pit trying to make bricks without straw. Ten Commandments. Check it out if you ain't seen it. Come on, people. This is not right. So I hope that you will, with us at the future today and tomorrow. I mean, oh, good Lord. Bad reference. I'm sorry. With us at Equirate AI, with Canis Capital Holdings, we're trying to work to change the generational income and opportunities for communities that have not had pathways. And separately at Canis Capital, we do a lot of work in this space. I'm not the expert to speak to all of our details, but if you visit our website, at caniscapitalholdings.com. You can get more information about the NIL products and services that we provide. But it is important because this is another pathway that can produce thousands of millionaires and financially stable people coming out of college ready to build positive lives. Why would you want to see people steal that from them? And why would you support that? Or why would you support any entity that supports that? This is Eric Foster, board chairman of Equirate of Canis Capital Holdings and Equirate AI. Please follow us on our Substack channel, on Apple Podcasts, on LinkedIn, Facebook, Blue Sky, Instagram, as well as I mentioned LinkedIn Threads. So please follow us on all of those different places. Once again, thank you. And if you want to reach out for additional information, you can always email me at eric@caniscapitalholdings.com. Thank you.